But, okay, so basically all we did is put them together and give one food. And we weren't even careful here about, well, what direction is the dog facing? Well, it would be nicer if we had been, but, you know, I'm just saying, you don't always have to do it the best way. You can just shove food in their face, and if it works that way, then it works that way. If it doesn't work that way, realize that there are better ways to do it. Does that make sense? But that's my example of just straight classical counter conditioning. Now, usually, you would pair classical counter conditioning with desensitization. I'd say most of the time, you're going to pair classical counter conditioning with desensitization. So this is just an example. This is also not perfect the way it's done. But let's say you have this dog is afraid of the dog over there. So we're going to start him far away. Give her treats. The only time she gets all these treats, and maybe her whole meal, is when the other dog's present. Then you disappear. You're away from the other dog and no food. Then when you get better, you can go closer. Realistically, I would not want her to face the other dog while you're walking in, because that's when, hey, let's get close to the other dog, and suddenly they explode. I would still want to control her going in. And even better yet, I think I'd want to be there and have the other dog appear, and then food starts. That other dog's well behaved. It's just staying. Yes, but you're right. You don't want the other dog to be able to get up and come over, because then you'll ruin, it's not desensitization if you suddenly flood the dog. So then she moves closer. So it's at each stage, you just move closer, and the goal is your dog just cares about the food. And nothing bad is happening to him. And you need to do it long enough that your dog just comes in and thinks, oh, good things when it sees the other dog. I think it's easier. It might be a little bit faster if your dog was stationary and the other dog appeared. And when the other dog appeared, then suddenly your dog was getting food. Because then it's clearly not the room, it's the appearance of the other dog. Because two things happened here. We walked into a room and then there was another dog. It might be better if you have your dog and then another dog appears and you just suddenly get food. This is where a treat and train can come handy. Because the other dog approaches, treat, 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 treat from the treat and train. The other dog walks away. Oh, the treat stopped. The other dog walks closer, treat, 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 treat. The other dog moves away, the treat stops. So whichever way you can make it clearest to the dog that the other dog equals treats, the faster your dog is going to learn. But you always want to stay below the threshold where your dog will respond. Okay, so that was desensitization and classical counter conditioning. I will do classical counter conditioning when I know that I can control the stimulus level. So I can control, if you can control that that dog enters and only stays at a certain distance and doesn't get too excitable, then you could do classical counter conditioning with desensitization. We can also use desensitization with operant counter conditioning, and that's where we train our dog a specific behavior that he gets rewarded for. So basically, if the dog is afraid of the radio, then when the radio turns on, you train your dog to do other behaviors. You could train him to fetch, you can have him do a bunch of tricks, you can do all these exercises that we did out here. So regardless of the type of distraction, whether that's a noise phobia, or another dog, or an inanimate object, or something your dog wants to chase, we can use the same exercises that we used out here to get our dogs focused on us instead of the things that are scary. So here's an example with Jones. Here, Jonesy wants to play with the chickens, meaning he wants to eat a chicken. So I got these chickens, and I think I'm going to train them. And I don't want to put them outside yet because they don't know to come when called. And so I have them in their kennel, and they're inside, and I want to counter condition Jonesy to them. And my living room's not that big. So people always say things like, well, she should have done it this way, or she should have done it that way. Well, I'm going to do it the way that works for me in real life, because I live in a real world, and I hope you live in a real world too, and we need to set things up so the way that they will work for people in the real world. And so, yeah, theoretically, I could move all the furniture out and make the living room way bigger. But I'm busy, and so I'm just going to do what's good enough for my situation. So here, I can't have my distance as wide as I would like it. So I'm going to have him do a bunch of exercises, and I would like him to avoid looking at those chickens. I'm doing it without a gentle leader, so watch this. Count how long he looks away. 1001, 1000. So it's 1001, 1001, 1001, 1002, probably.
And I can show the difference between this and a
1001, 1001, 1000. 1000. Don't do that looking at the chickens. Okay. 1001. Oops. So when he looks away for under 2 seconds, but it's still long looks given the distance we have. And I'm having to move a lot, but I can't move fast enough because there's not enough room. So here I put a gentle leader on. So now let's look how long he looks away. 1000. 1001. Now it's easier for me if I can hold this gentle leader because there he can only look away a little before he has to look back, before he realizes he can't look any further. And I don't have to pull him. My goal is I just hold it. Okay, that doesn't count. It flew in front. It's asking for death.
But they run and jump fast. Good.
But notice, at least I'm not having to move as fast or as change my direction as much. So I'm not having to work as hard with the gentle leader on. He's still doing a lot of glances, but they're a little bit shorter. And so I'm not having to move as much. I'm not having to work as hard.
If he was charging the chickens, would you make more distance? Or?
Yes, if he was actually charging the chickens and I couldn't keep him focused at all, like I would work further away. So I chose this distance because we can do it at this distance well enough. And I know that he won't just charge and kill a chicken or anything because we've worked around enough different types of animals. So then basically what I did is hardly practiced at all because I was busy. I did do straight classical counter conditioning. Well, I actually did operant because he was required to lie down. So on the other side of the couch, what I did is a couple times I let him out, but we were on this side of the couch, and I would just have him lie down and give him treats because I didn't feel like working with him.
This is what you would do when you've got the dog chasing the cat. When the cat goes into the room.
Yes, the same thing.
The dog takes off after the cat.
Yes.
This is the type of thing you want.
Yes, exactly the same type of thing if you have the dog that wants to chase after the cat. Or you have a dog who you have guests over, but he's not actually going to attack them because you don't want to practice this with your guests over this way. You need to get your dog way better. But any type of thing where your dog wants to get to and you need to train him to focus on you and be calmer and not worry about those other things. In fact, I did the exact same thing with the cats when he first got used to cats. Yeah. But they should go through the Learn to Earn program first because remember, if they don't have impulse control, they really just can't do what you want because they're not even thinking, they're just reacting. So basically I had 2 little sessions with him where all I did is have him come into the room, have him lie down away from on the other side of the couch. And the reason I did it that way is because I didn't feel like having him on leash or doing anything, basically. So I just called him to the room and said, okay, you're lying down there, you're getting treats. And then now he's just good with the chickens. And you can see they're not afraid of him at all. They follow him around just in case there might be food around where he is. So I do leave him out with the chickens. Well, this seems so easy, right? Well, this is so easy. Why do so many people have difficulty? It's because it's more than just doing these exercises. The approach has to be broad. There's a lot of things we need to consider. We must address impulse control or emotional control because we can't just say do these exercises. They need to have impulse control so they can actually listen to you and focus on you and hear what you want them to do and then do the exercises. And the humans need to learn to have leadership and guidance. They need to be able to move in ways to direct the dog what they want the dog to do. Move in the right ways and then later just be able to do verbal or less energetic, less things that require less work on the human's part. And so the approach needs to be broad. We have to address impulse control, and we have to address all situations where the dog is fearful, and all these situations where the dog is aggressive or overly aroused or reactive. Not just the one thing we think we're most concerned about. It's all of those things. We need to address impulse. We need to address impulse control and go on the Learn to Earn program. We have to address all the situations where the dog is fearful and address all the situations where the dog is aggressive or overly aroused. And we need to keep the dog safe in the meantime. Number one, you need to keep the dog actually safe. You need to have a broad approach, and you need to keep the dog safe. Because a lot of times, maybe it won't be hard to train to work with the dog, but if the owner doesn't work with the dog, then they put it in a situation where the dog's going to bite, and the dog bites. And then they're really upset that the dog bit again for the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time, when it was their fault because they didn't put the dog in a safe situation. The dog was not ready to be in the situation that they put it in. So our overall approach is going to be, number one, keep the dog safe. That means out of situations where he might bite or be aggressive, unless you're specifically working on those situations. So number one, keep the dog safe out of those situations. Number two, identify all the situations where he's fearful and keep him out of those situations, unless you're desensitizing him at that instant. So keep him out of all the fear situations. Number three, find all the high arousal situations and keep him out of those, unless you're addressing those situations. In the meantime, he's going to need to be on the Learn to Earn program to work on impulse control. And then four, then once we have considered all of these three things and we're especially keeping him safe, then we're really going to focus on, let's desensitize and counter-condition him to all of those specific fears or reactivity situations. And once we get that going, we get all these things going, then if we want, we can address any other of the handling or aggression situations later. So for instance, your main thing might be fear aggression to unfamiliar people, but you also have a dog that won't let you do a toenail trim. Well, which one's the emergency? It's probably not the toenail trim. It's probably you need to get the dog under control so you can get him out in public without having to worry that he's going to kill somebody. Now, on the other hand, if you have a huge property and nobody comes to visit you, maybe the toenail trim is the higher priority item. But you need to figure out what, given the household situation, what is the most important and how are we going to address that? So you don't want to do everything at once because you can't do everything at once. They need to have focused training so they can make good progress, good and consistent progress. Okay, so let's go over these one by one and see what happens. So number one, keep the dog out of bite situations. Why is this so difficult? How many people have come up to me today, just this weekend, or to other people and said, but my dog he's not bad with everybody, he only barks at some people. Or my dog is not reactive to all dogs, he only reacts to some dogs. So what does that mean? That means, well, I can't figure out which dogs I need to work around, or which people I need to work around. Which people do I need to practice being safe around, or which dogs do I need to practice being safe around? The answer is you need to assume they're all going to be bad. You don't go, well, which one? Is it the human with the little mustache with just a little bit of gray in it who happens to be wearing a hat on a Wednesday? No, just assume it's going to be everybody. Because why is that? Or, okay, so let's take a look with Homer. Homer has a history of being aggressive to some people and fearful in new environments. He went to the shelter. This is a dog, he's really cute. And my assistant Melissa was like, oh, he's so cute. There's this really cute dog at the shelter. I think he's even cuter than Jonesy. And I'm like, okay, really? No. But then I used to think, I thought all Jack Russells are cute. And now I think, wow, Jonesy is kind of cuter. But anyway, she thought Homer was really cute. And then she was trying to get one of our past volunteers to adopt him. And she sent her a picture, and Iris looks at the picture, and she goes, wait, that's a Jack Russell like Jones, isn't it? No way. Because she had to work with Jones that first year that I got Jones, and Jones would not did not care about other people at all that first year. So anyway, this dog gets adopted out, and then, I was telling Melissa, oh, that's okay, when he comes back to the shelter, then we'll adopt him out to Iris. And of course he came back to the shelter, and that's why I named him Homer. So he's going to keep coming back. So he turns out he's a little bit fearful in new environments. He's possibly aggressive to some people, meaning that there was a kid in the household and he was aggressive to that kid. I don't think he bit the kid, but he has a history. Turns out we don't know how he is with dogs. We thought maybe he would be aggressive. We're not sure. Doesn't like people blowing in his face or card shuffling or a stapler. The sounds of a stapler. And remember, I counter-conditioned him to the blowing in the face, and that was really easy. But we know he might be afraid of new people. Okay, now here he is with other dogs. So we've heard maybe he's not good with other dogs, and so all I do is this. You can see he's not that hard to train. We easily train him to do down, stay. And then my friend visited, and then all I do is just have him behind a barrier, and I let Homer loose.
Now Homer's like, you can let
Jonesy's
Jonesy out
back
now.
there. And then we're going to do this introduction to just, he already knows Jones. Jones does not like him. He's like my stupid sidekick that I wish I could ditch. And now we just introduce him to the other dog, no problem.
I should give you treats.
So at this point you just think, yeah, he's not bad with other dogs. I didn't even have to do anything. He just had to be around him a little bit, get to sniff him without a direct reading, and he was okay. So then you think, wow, he's not bad around other dogs. Okay, here he is. So here, this was not at dog class. This was after dog class. We wanted to show how he was if he saw other dogs. Okay, so he sees another dog, and what I'm going to do is, basically I saw on TV that this person said, oh, all you have to do is be confident and your dog will get better. So I'm going to just be confident, meaning I just ignore my dog. I act like nothing's happening. That's my calm, confident self. So I don't do anything. He's pretty aroused. Now the dog is closer. I'm doing nothing, and he seems to be calming down. Versus, some owners get really tense, and then they pull on the leash, and they're like, no, 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 stop, stop, stop. And then they keep pulling on the leash, which would be similar to if you went to a bar, and then two people are going to get in a fight, and you poke them. That's exactly like pulling on the leash. I'm aroused, and you yank, 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 yank. That'll get him more aroused. Okay, so he saw that dog face to face. He was like, well, whatever. He was really aroused, and this on his own he seems to be improving. So then he meets this dog. We give the other dog treats, and he's like, hi, who are you? Oh, wait, now he's a little bit tense. Not bad. Then he comes back. And now he's like, hey, but what's that other thing there? Okay, so basically, if you're successful doing nothing, you might think, see, it turned out fine. Then he's getting a few treats. So clearly, doing nothing and he's fine. Now let's look at another dog.
Oh, you can give your treats too.
He wouldn't take any. I think he's too nervous. He's a little scared. Yeah.
Bring him over there a little bit.
Okay, that's a displacement behavior. Usually dogs do that to solicit attention.
Like, see Homer's face.
He just does it when
Right
he's
here, so I can
excited.
see Homer's face.
I'm just being confident. Thinking good thoughts in my head. I think he's just going to get better on his own because I'm confident.
He won't. He's good with other dogs. Yeah.
She meant the other dog. He's never bitten before. This will be the first time. Okay, so here he is. The other dog's getting closer. Gee, should I let him loose? No. Like the other dog's like, I don't see a dog. There's no dog right next to me.
So he's partly not inhibited at the size. Okay, bring him up again. We're getting bad video.
This placement, this behavior. It's a behavior out of context. So normally he'd just do it if he wants to solicit attention and they're excited. Sometimes they go like this, but he's doing it when he's excited. It's like, it's dorky. I know.
Okay, bring him close again.
It's just like, this. Okay, still not safe to let go, right? Yeah, we're not letting him go. The other dog's just still like, oh, I don't see you. There's no other dog here. Okay. Same dog, different location. He sees that dog. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you. Kill! Kill! Okay. Now with a different dog. Okay. Again, this is not during our dog class. This is us just getting video of him after a dog class.
Okay, you can approach.
Okay, here he's going to see. I don't know why I was giving him treats here. I should have just let him look. But anyway, this other dog gets closer. Whatever, hey. Never met this dog either. So this is where the owner goes, well, he's good with some dogs. I can't tell exactly which dogs. Well, that's because you should be working with every dog, not just going, oh, which one? Let's wait till he's reactive and almost biting, and then he's over threshold and I can't get his attention back. It is now. Giving him treats is out of positive association. He would not have taken treats with that other dog. He did not even get to nearly the level with this dog, and it was just, he didn't care. Here's another dog. Okay, this was like the second day I had him. And on the first day, I thought, okay, I'm only going to have a dog in a leash in my house if I can get video of him. So remember, I do not take dogs into my house normally. It's just that if I do take a dog in my house and work with him, he's going to be videotaped a lot. Because I don't have time to just work with somebody's dog and not get something out of it that I can show to other people. Okay, so here I decide, we purposely took him out on a retractable leash so he'd be naughty. And then we were trying to get video of how bad he was walking on leash, and he wouldn't walk badly on leash. Then we got somebody to walk by with their dog, and he didn't care. So, because that's how they are. Just bring the video camera out, and you've cured your dog. Only temporarily, though, because look at this. Then my neighbor goes, you want to see our new dog? We have a basset. So I said, okay, like a sucker. And I have him on a retractable leash, and then look. Okay, so watch. Did you see what happened? I have this dog. I'm holding him, and somebody lets they walk their dog into my dog. It's like, can you not tell? Well, it's a kid. He's not going to tell. But you, who adult, standing behind the kid. Okay. Now it turns out he did not injure this dog at all. There was no marks even on the dog. He gummed the dog, apparently. Luckily, but look at his... And then, of course, Jonesy is getting in, and at this point, Jonesy's not... Like, Jones, I'm going to kill you, too! Okay, this dog is screaming bloody murder. And then Homer's still like, I'm still going to kill you. And then I'm like, okay, the little dog, when you pull him, they just go flying. That's just... Okay, so the point of that is, look, he seemed okay when I let that big dog come up to him. And then we had two little dogs. One little dog, he was just fine. The other dog, I just let him look, and he was overly aroused. And when, you didn't see it, but I did give some treats to him, but he was still overly aroused. And then there's this dog, and he does actually cause a problem, because this dog actually pushed into his face. So one thing I forgot to tell you is if you have a little dog, you can pick them up. And I have not had a bunch of little dogs, so I'm not used to picking them up. But this case, it is okay to pick the dog up and get him out of the situation.
Can you pick up a big dog too?
If your big dog's not going to redirect towards you.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So the question is, could you just pick up a big dog and take him out of the situation? If you need to get him out of the situation, I would get him out whichever way you can without him really struggling and causing a problem. Because, for instance, you can pick up a little dog pretty safely and then keep him from struggling, but a big dog might be bigger and then thrash around, and the more they thrash around, the more likely you are to get bitten, and then they could get loose, and they could just, the more they thrash around, their arousal level is going to still stay high. So,
Physiologically, would that make them feel safer, or would they just...
not if you can't hold them, and if you're not big enough. The little dog, at least I can hold the little dog big enough and get him out of the situation. The thing is more to just get him out of the situation so he can't bite that other dog, right? And then just move. Because if I were to hold him and stay there for a long time, maybe he is going to start to struggle, and maybe even picking this little dog up, he could actually bite me too. So at this situation, if I could have picked him up, and I could have probably just picked him up and walked away, and then there would be no problem. So maybe for your dog who's good with you, if another dog comes rushing over.
But then do you want that last association to be that with those two?
Do I want the last association to be that they have that bad? Hey, he hasn't been trained, so he can't have another association. This is day 2. He has not learned anything yet.
So, but you wouldn't try to take that situation and kind of desensitize him?
Would I take that situation and desensitize him to the other dog? No, because he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know anything. How can I train him if he doesn't know anything? So I need to train him first to be able to do something with him. So I need to go do my homework and put him through training so that he has the skills to be in this type of situation. And then I need to keep him out of those situations. I need to keep him safe and out of those situations. So the take-home message here is handlers tend to hope that their dog will be okay. So what they do is they assume their dog will be they assume that their dog will be okay most of the time, and they wait for their dog to react. And then they go, I don't understand, why did he react with that one dog? I think that dog just smelled funny that day, or it's black, or it looks too much like the other dog that once attacked him, maybe that I heard possibly once attacked him. So they make up all these stories about why it's just that one dog, when they should be assuming he'll have a reaction to all dogs, so that he only has positive experiences around those dogs. Same thing with people, and same things with any type of situation where your dog gets aroused. So they should assume that their dog will be reactive to each dog or on each dog encounter and take precautions. Either avoid those encounters or specifically work with him. But you can only work with him if you have the skills to work with him. If you do not have the skills to keep him below threshold, you should get him out of the situation. Does that make sense? And so number 1, we should assume that he's going to be a problem with all dogs because we know that he has a history of being reactive to these dogs that he's unfamiliar to. Secondly, the handlers are going to need specific techniques for controlling their dogs and getting their dogs out of those situations. If you don't have techniques, you can wish that you could handle the situation, but you can't. So for instance, if we're just relying on shove the food in their face, then you really have to rely on being aware of your environment and getting away from the other dogs, like being behind a car, like having radar that tells you when a dog is somewhere or coming around a corner or something, and just knowing and being able to get far enough away that your dog does not react. Or that your dog getting far enough away so that just food in the face will work. So if you're just using classical counter conditioning with food in the face, you need to control the situations more so you can be farther away and below that level where your dog would react. So now what we want to do is the owners need to keep safe. They need to avoid the dogs. Maybe they need to have a muzzle on, a gentle leader and a muzzle on their dog. Then we can also teach some ways to get away from other dogs. So for instance here, she sees the stimulus, she just goes right into a repeat sit backwards. Now this is the only speed that this person can move because she has a medical condition where this is as fast as she can move. So even though we say, well, ideally I'd love her to be able to move in a 1, but realistically we have to have her move at whatever speed she can move. So we need to choose the distance where she can deal with this. And for her, she was a good match for her dog. So you want to do that repeat sit backwards before your dog can react. Here's another example. You're walking down the street. Her dog already knows to heel well now. It didn't when she first got it, but then when she first came, but now she has it to the point where the dog can focus on her well enough. So here, you're walking down the street. Dog is reactive to dogs and people. Oh no, a person suddenly appears. I would like her to do an L into the street. She backs up first and then moves into the street. She could have just gone right into the street
Let's go.
and then go on her way.
Pretty okay.
So here, then we have to actually practice this until she feels comfortable. Oh no, here comes somebody, quick. Back up, move into the street fast. She could have just moved out into the street. When you do this with people, you have to practice the pattern with them. You practice it without their dog first, and then you practice it with their dog with just an easy distraction, and when they can do it comfortably, then you add a more difficult distraction. Because if you put in that difficult distraction, the owner freezes. They can't figure out what to do. They need to practice the pattern enough until it becomes comfortable.
Will you just have her turn around into the street? She couldn't step into the street?
We have a bunch of different techniques. We have about 14 different techniques. The reason that I don't just tell everybody just turn around and walk the other way is because we need a number of different techniques that you can use and choose based on the situation. So I'm just showing you some techniques. Also, in general, a lot of times people will just do an about turn and walk the other way. Doing a repeat sit backwards requires more focus on your dog. So doing an about turn and turning the other way is just, people do that all the time in obedience, and the dog can do it in his sleep without even having to think. But when you change that from a forward movement to a backward movement, it requires more focus. And so your dog, if you change up what you do in a way that it's not predictable to the dog, then it's more interesting, and you can keep attention better.
I've been in situations where I can't back up because I'm trying to get away from the dog that's behind me.
By 2 dogs at one time? Yeah, then you just do an L into the street.
Right, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's why you need all the different ways, because you don't know which way you're going to use. But when we train it, we have to train it with just one stimulus, because the person has to learn the techniques first. Then you use whichever technique you need in that situation. So owners will need specific techniques for controlling their dog around other dogs so they can prevent the barking and lunging. Especially when they can't just move far enough away that their dog doesn't care, or that their dog will just focus on food in its face. So we saw the repeat sits backwards. We saw L into the street. Here's another example. Repeat sit backwards parallel to the other dog. So here comes another dog. We're like, uh-oh, I'm going to do repeat sit, then backwards. Then I'm going to heel forward. So I wait till the dog gets by, and then I hurry up and go forward. So notice it wasn't like, I do a repeat sit backwards, what's the next step? No, this is a fast dance. You got to know all the steps in a row so the dog doesn't have a chance to go, oh, I'm not sure what to do next.
So are you moving the dog away before he sees the other dog?
Well, it's before he will react to the other dog. So it depends on your dog's distance. Yes. So my goal is move before my dog will react to the other dog. And then when will your dog react? It can depend on what the other dog is doing. So for instance, if this other dog is lunging forward on the leash, I'm going to need to do a farther distance. Okay, here's another example. Right here, I decide to back up, and as the dog goes by, I'm going to change directions. There. But I'm at the distance where I can do that. I'm always working at a distance where I use the technique that will work at that distance. Okay, here's another example. And I have a blog with a bunch of these techniques illustrated in cartoons as well. So here I'm just going to do repeat sits on the left side. So anything where you heel past the dog is more challenging than doing a repeat sit backwards.
Those are, you have a lot of space, you know, lumbering or bicycle path.
Yes, so here I'm showing a lot of space because that other dog is reactive also. So if you have less space, you do the same things, but you better be better at your technique. Like, for instance, I don't go heeling by another dog if that dog is lunging at us and we don't have much space. Instead, I would do a repeat sit backwards in that situation. So I'm going to use whichever technique will work best in that situation, and that's going to depend on my skill, my dog's ability to focus on me, given what technique I'm using, and the behavior of the other dog. If the other dog's walking nicely, I'm going to be able to just heel right by. If the other dog's just lunging a little bit, I'm going to be able to heel by. If that dog is like, then I've got to do something different to get by it. Uh-huh.
Until you have the skills, it's probably in your best interest to do your due diligence to like avoid the bicycle path if at all possible.
Yes. So, yes. Because, if you don't have the skills, then you need to stay out of that situation. So that's why we're saying you need to keep your dog safe. You're developing the skills, and then for the skills you have, you should only be in the situation where the skills you have will be good enough. Does that make sense? Because you can't do any better than that. Uh-huh.
Do you ever, if the dog's to the point where the dog sees another dog and starts to anticipate you backing up for the sit, at that point do you consider it that you want to deliver very reinforcement
Okay, so here's an example. The example is, well, do you get to the point where the dog looks at the other dog and that's your dog's cue to do something more appropriate? Depends on your dog. So some people I've had accidentally train their dog to be reactive when they do a backup because they're not doing it right. What they do, I've had it happen with one person where she actually pulls on the dog. She doesn't actually move to get the dog to follow her. So she trained the dog that, oh, when you see another dog, I'm going to practice these exercises, but I'm just going to pull on your face, which means that you're just restrained and you're not actually being rewarded for doing the right behaviors. Does that make sense? That's the same as saying, I see another dog, now I'm going to pull on you. And that'll make them more reactive. If you have good technique and you're getting the dog focused before they really get to react, then what can happen is that, for instance, with my dad's cattle dog, when I got that dog, when I inherited him, we would walk past his house where this German Shepherd would run out to the front and go, rah, rah, rah. And he would get excited, so what I would do is I'd just have him heel. And I think it was by day 2 or 3 that we were walking past that house. He heard that dog go, rah, 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 and he came and ran up to me and looked and heeled. So it depends on the dog and the situation. So for Jones, I'm going to have to work with him probably a long time, and the reason is that in my house, we work, it's a home office. So I have people going in and out of the house. Like we actually measured how many times do people walk by the living room, because we were measuring how many times we were walking by our new rabbit cages, and it was like 100 times a day. So we're getting that much traffic in the house and going in and out of the house, so the dog has a lot of stimulus. And my room is not yet soundproofed, so it is not a safe, quiet place. It was supposed to be soundproofed like 6 months ago. Thank you to the contractors for taking so long. But so for him, because he has a lot of these other stimulus that might be increasing his arousal, people coming in and out of the house a lot, and because I'm working on so many different things with him that, for instance, on a daily basis, we might have to go by dogs that are really naughty and bark and lunge at him, rather than me, and I'm not careful in going, okay, for the next 100 dogs, we're going to make sure he only has positive responses. So because of that, for him, I'll probably have to be working with him to keep him focused when new dogs come running up to him for a long time. But if I were able to do, like, let's do 200 dogs in a row, and let's also work consistently on his other impulse issues, then I could get him to the point where, oh, you see another dog and you just do this. Does that make sense? So it depends on your skill and then how consistent you can be that every interaction is good, so that you change, and in enough different contexts, so that you can change the picture in your dog's mind. And I would say most dogs that I've worked with are like 1,000,000 times easier than Jonesy, because they don't have the same arousal level as him, and they don't have quite the environment, quite the environment where we have so much stimulus. So most of my client dogs, I would say, are way easier. Okay, so this one, let's see. This is just another example. This is one, again, I'm switching to repeat sits backwards. So it's just, there's a number of different patterns you can use, and so you want to know a bunch of different ones so that you can use whichever one happens to work in that situation. And then remember with this dog, it was like, in this case, we said, oh, he's not ready for this situation because he's not really trained. And at this point, like, oh no, he's reacting to a dog and that dog won't leave. What do? I need to do whatever I can to keep him from reacting and getting out of that situation. So for instance, in this case, if he was like this, I would go, oops. I'd be going, okay, I need to just get him focused enough so that we can do these repeat sits while this dog is here. And I might just do a couple of repeat sits and work my way away from the dog and then get out of the situation. Even though he's not trained, because I just need to get out of the situation. Does that make sense? He's not trained to be in this situation and learn something good from it. I just need to get out of the situation. So, step one, keep the dog safe, out of situations where he might bite or be aggressive or react. And remember that handlers tend to assume their dog will be good when they should assume he'll react, or he'll assume if he's just fearful, it's okay. So for instance, I may go on a 3-mile run with Jonesy off leash and go, well, I hope no dogs are really rude to him because I only have enough treats for the stuff I feel like training and not for 10 dogs to rush up to him. Or maybe I'm not really thinking really hard and I go, I only have enough treats for if 5 dogs run up to him. But what if 6 does? Then I'm not ready for the 6th one. So if I really want to get my dog to improve, I need to be prepared to be in the situations where he might have a problem, only at the times when I can work on him. And the rest of the time, I need to keep him safe. So that means keep him out of those situations, keep him away from the other dogs, keep a muzzle on him if needed, muzzle and a gentle leader if needed, but keep him out of those situations unless you can practice on it. And then, so I need to keep him out of those situations, and then I must work with him in every single of the, for instance, every single of the cases where he sees a dog, even if I think he's going to be okay, I need to be working with him. And I need to have the skill to keep him controlled. I need to have the skill to either get him out of the situation or to work with him in that situation. So I need some type of skills. So keep reactive dogs away from all dogs that he may potentially react to, unless you're specifically working on desensitizing and counter-conditioning. Second, use muzzles as a safety if needed. I tend to use the clear Jafco muzzles because I can make a hole in the front easily and they're pretty stable. And then I can give treats through that hole in the front. And realize that you do need to learn how to control your dog, since you can't always predict what other dogs will do. So sometimes people will say, well, the main technique I'm using is the look at that technique or some other technique like that, where you really focus on being at the distance where your dog can look at that dog and look back. Do you guys know what the look at that technique is? You let your dog look at the thing they're afraid of, and then you reward them for looking back. But that only works if your dog can look at the other dog and be under threshold. Because a lot of dogs look at the dog and they explode. So I don't use that technique until after I have good control of the dogs. Step one is we're going to keep them safe. Step 2 is we want to identify all fear stimuli so that we can avoid these stimuli unless we're working on them. So for instance, remember we said that Jonesy's aggressive. So we saw that he was aggressive at 8 weeks of age. We also saw that I thought he was going to be easy to train even though he was aggressive, but it turns out he's afraid of all different types of things, like the ironing board. So I'm just throwing treats around the ironing board, and he thinks, well, maybe it's okay. Then it changes shape, and he gets scared. And then I think, oh, I'm going to counter condition him, operant counter conditioning, but I'm doing it too close to the board. Because see, he has to worry about it. I need to do it in a way where he's just thinking how fun this is, and he's not concerned that the board's going to attack him. Now, a lot of people go, well, it's weird. It was on its side, and now it's standing up, so why is he so scared? What's so weird about him? Well, imagine this. You're out on the savannah, and you see lions that are sleeping or lying down. Well, then they're probably okay. But if they get up and start stalking, should you still assume they're okay? No, different postures and different contexts equal danger. So he should err on the side of safety if he thinks his life is threatened. So remember that we want to address fear because a fear of one thing will exacerbate his fear of other things. So he's also afraid of boxes. So if he's afraid of boxes, I need to keep him away from boxes unless I'm specifically desensitizing and counter conditioning. Now, I can keep him away from ironing boards really easily. But I have boxes in my house all the time because we have people, boxes are getting delivered to my house on a daily basis. And he might see him lying around, and for an instant he's okay, and then later in the day he scares him. So for this particular thing, I decide, oh, he's afraid of these. I should avoid them as much as possible. But realistically, he's going to be afraid, so I should try to counter condition him as soon as possible because it's hard to get him to avoid this. So in this situation, he's afraid of something, and I decide I better get him to counter condition him. Now, he was afraid of suitcases, skateboards, boxes, rollerblades, signs, pictures of dogs, pictures of people, if they were big, like a mural. On a walk, he'd be afraid of that paper that goes floating by, the sign that makes sound, sometimes metal things sticking out of the ground, tripod. He was afraid of a lot of stuff. So I would counter condition him around them, so he would associate, box, don't be afraid of the box, focus on me instead. But it was hard to make it clear, there were so many things, it was hard to make it clear that, how do I make it more clear that that thing is good? So he might be around the thing and think it was okay. So for instance, he got used to murals because he got counter conditioned. But then what would happen is there were still some objects like the box that if he got startled, it would scare him. He'd be walking around and la la la, oh my gosh, a box! The one that was there earlier in the day, like a horse, you move it a little and suddenly they get scared. So I decided, to try to figure out, well, what's a better way to make it clear to him that the box is really, really good so that if it suddenly appears and is startling, he'll think something more neutral. So I decided that I was going to train him that when he sees a box, he should step on it. Okay. And I can do this because it's an inanimate object, and he's not super scared if he doesn't get startled. Yes. If he was afraid to go near it, I would not have him step on it. Yes. So I want to do this in rapid succession. Now this is a time when a clicker or a verbal marker is useful because he's looking away. Oh, I'll start over. Too bad. Yes. I want him to be pretty rough with it. Make it even move because that's what scares him. Too bad. Yes. Want him to knock it over. Now, look, he's scared. See how it scares him now? So now I don't want to require that he steps on it. I want to make it easier. Yes. So I'm just going to let him look at it. Yes. So a clicker is useful here because he's not looking at me at the times when I need to reward him. Yes. Get it. Yes. Yes. So when I say yes, he knows to look back at me to get his treat. If you're using a verbal marker, they should know, look back at you to get the reward. If they're not, they probably aren't really paying attention to that verbal or that type of marker. Yes. Yes. So because I did the looking at the box in rapid succession, he rapidly
Yes.
progressed to the point where he could step on it.
Yes.
Okay, now I want to make it more and more scary, but I want to make it scary far away from him and then let him go to it. Now watch, sometimes he gets scared and he'll growl, or he'll start barking a little bit. So right there he growled. He will growl when he gets a little bit scared.
Yes.
Because it causes his arousal level to get higher. And a lot of people, what they don't realize is they think, oh, now he's just having fun. Now it's just fun. It's really, he does it when he's scared. Because I could make him growl by making it too scary in front of him, where he would back away, and then I could reliably tell you that he's going to growl on the next time he steps on it. Does that make sense? Because other people might think, oh, now he likes it, it's a fun game. No, don't let him growl or bark. He should be below that level when you do these things. When I first started this, I thought, I'll have him touch things with his nose instead of stepping on him. And so I would have a rollerblade, and I'd have him touch it with his nose, and then I'd throw a treat, and he'd get it. And then what happened is that when I made it more scary and I was moving with the rollerblades, he'd touch it, but he'd be growling at the same time. Well, that's not very smart, is it? Having them touch things with their nose while they're growling. So that's why I switched to stepping on things instead. And I also learned that when I make it more scary, it needs to be far away from him so that he's not above threshold. And then when he gets comfortable with it being super scary farther away, maybe I'll make it scary closer. So basically after the 5 days, he was much better about boxes, but there are times when other things are going around in the house, and so he gets more aroused, and then all of a sudden he starts barking at like my backpack that appears or a box that appears. And that's when I know, oh, I need to change other things that are going around in the house and work on impulse control, or I need to work specifically on the box or the thing that's causing him to be nervous. So the other things in the household are increasing arousal and fear, and he'll be more reactive to the boxes again. So I think I've had maybe 2 times that happened in the last several years. Okay, 3 is that we're going to go on the Learn to Earn program no matter what. Even if you think your dog is perfect, you're going on the Learn to Earn program. If your dog truly is perfect, it'll only take 2 or 3 days. But you don't want to skip it, because if your dog was not perfect and you skip it, then you're really going to extend that training. Because remember, even for things like getting your dog to come when called with a high distraction, like the squirrel, they said your dog may know a come when called, but if he doesn't have the impulse control to actually listen to you, then he can't come in that situation. So we're going to put all dogs on the Learn to Earn, even if it's for just a day or 2. And we're going to avoid all high arousal situations unless we're specifically working on them. So for instance, if your dog has a habit of fence fighting in the yard, don't put him in the yard. If your dog plays in an overly aroused manner with other dogs, he should not be playing unless you're practicing on coming when called before he gets too aroused. If your dog is at home and he's barking because there's too many stimuli outside, we need to figure out how to keep him in a room where it's calmer for him. For Jonesy, ideally, I would have him in my quiet room during the day when a lot of people might go in and out of the house, unless he's in my office and I'm specifically working with him. So ideally, he'd be in that room most of the time, and then I might have him in my room for maybe an hour, and every time somebody goes in and out the front door, then he's getting, what he has is I have a sensor, and it says, it causes a sound to go woof, 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 and then he knows when he hears that he should run and step on my feet and then go get his reward from the treat and train. But the problem is that I can only do that so many times during the day before he gets full. I don't want him to get full because I want to train other things. So I need to have just a portion of the day when I can do that, and then the rest of the day he's in his room. Because he does think about coming and stepping on my feet, but there are times when I don't have time to do that with him because there are too many ins and outs. Okay, so avoid the situation unless we're working, the high arousal situation unless we're working on it, and he's going to be on the learn to earn no matter what. Okay, so remember, let's just see. Just want to show you Jonesy's baseline behavior. So you remember he had this horrible someone called. He'd get with his old owner, and for 5 months he practiced getting loose and avoiding listening to her. So at this point, he's gone through the learn to earn in the house, and he's pretty decent in the house, but not outdoors. So that was his behavior when the dog was like a football field away, or like up to the soccer post or way far away, and then he can't focus. So we need to be out of the situation. Okay, so we need to just leave and do something different. Now here's one thing about Jonesy is that I was working with him for a long time. Usually within, a week, a couple weeks, bad dogs maybe a month, really hard dogs maybe a month, they're walking outside really focused, and when I stop they sit and they remain seated. And then Jonesy, here he is after, I don't know if it was 1 year or 2 years, and we're only around the block, and if I stop and I'm not actively having him sit, he's wandering around doing whatever. So this is like, what is wrong with you? I had him downtown, and I was like just looking in the windows, and I'm like, how come I'm having to reward him for sitting? And I'm like, what's wrong with the training? And then I would get a client dog, and I'm like, oh, it's Jonesy. Like every client dog, oh, see, it's still Jonesy. But I did realize that part of the thing that I should have been doing that I wasn't doing back then was once they know the behavior well, for instance, in the house, that they should sit and remain seated whenever I stop, or on a walk, that they should sit and remain seated whenever I stop because they've got a lot of reinforcements. At that point, if they keep getting up, I need to make it clear that within 0.5 seconds that they are not getting up. So for instance, I need to, for him, I should have had my hand on the leash when he was sitting so that if he started to get up, immediately I would have it in a way that he couldn't move anymore. Does that make sense? Like he starts to get up, and as soon as he gets up, he's like, oh, can't go anywhere. So I'm not like yanking or anything. It's like the leash is only this long, and he starts to get up, and it's like, whoop, not going anywhere. So it'd be clear within 0.5 seconds, oh, getting up doesn't work. There's nowhere to get up. So it's not a correction. It's just I'm holding the leash, so you can't actually move more than 2 inches. You can only be in a sit on a loose leash. The loose leash will be loose when you're on a sit. As soon as you start to stand, it's clear that, oh, that doesn't work. So if I had done that, the negative punishment part, he probably would not have been doing this by then because he doesn't do this anymore. He sits nicely. It just probably took me 10 times longer. So remember with Jonesy, we went through this. I'm going to show this again just to make sure that we're all on the same page. The impulsivity, he had high impulse around toys, so we train him to sit or lie down. He's required to lie down to get his toy. But I trained him specifically lie down and remain lying down in order to get your toy, because I need to increase the level of impulse control. Not just lie down, but be able to lie down for longer periods, because other dogs might be playing with toys. Remember then, I had to go to the point with, hey, not only do you have to lie down to get your toy, but you should actually heel to get your toy. So here he wants to get to the toy, but remember, he knows looking at me will get him what he wants, get him to where he wants. So, hey, if you look at me, we're going to be able to heel towards that toy. And remember, I also had to get him one step higher arousal than this would be another dog playing with a squeaky toy. So then I had to work on, hey, focus on me and sit and look at me, and when the other dog's playing with the toy, and then I'm going to release you to get that toy because I set it up so that he could have the other dog's toy, which I bought for them. Then, after he can do that a couple times, we're going to advance to heel in order to get that other dog's toy, because I need to be able to have him focus on me long enough that he can do an agility course.
You also have to teach him to drop the toy.
Yeah, the first thing we do is teach him to release the toy, and that's actually in the DVD on Creating the Perfect Puppy in 7 Days, how to get them to focus on the toy, how to get them interested in the toy enough, and then how to train them to release the toy while keeping them interested and still wanting to play with the toy.
What did you say to Jonesy to release him? To get his toy?
I do a food trade to get them to release, so I just shove a food in their face.
When you were releasing from the heel to go get the ball.
Oh, it's just his regular release word, which was okay. But if I would go back and train it, I would use a free or something else because you say okay too much. But once you learn that, like I can't get another dog till after Jonesy's gone because I would get confused. Or maybe I would just, well, I guess I could. I would just have to change my word to free for every dog, even if they knew okay. And I would just know that, well, Jonesy's still going to think okay is okay, but just always use free. So, okay, and then remember that I was thinking anything he wants, I'm going to use that to my advantage in terms of impulse control. So I want to train him. He has to work for me look at me for everything he wants. But remember, you have to do this within reason. So for instance, if your dog likes to kill cats, you're not going to use a cat and release him to go get that cat. Because some people will say that, but what if my dog would kill that animal? Well, don't let him don't do it if he's going to kill the animal. Okay, so we're going to be reasonable here. So I'm only going to do this type of situation if I know that I can get him to come back when called so that he's not in a dangerous situation. And we'd practice to come when called because I would have him focus on me, and then I would release him on a long leash, and we'd be close enough to the squirrel, and then when he could jump around with the squirrel and he had enough time, then I'd run the other way, do the come when called and run the other way, and then he'd come and then he'd sit and focus. And that's easier to do than the healing part because I could get far enough away on the come when called that he would focus. And I hear you only have tree squirrels here, which is even better because they just run up the tree so you don't have to worry so much that they're going to run away further. So remember here, he can focus on the squirrels. I'm going to give him enough time. If I spent just a minute healing with him, then he should probably have a minute playing with the squirrels or playing with where he thinks the squirrels are. Now here's another case where he would get overly aroused. This would be Lucy jumping on his face. Sal, one person asked me, okay, so here's Jones. He's trying to play fetch, and Lucy's trying to play jump on my face. Jump on Jonesy's face, or jump on his head. She wants to play, it's called full court press, so you can hear him right there. He doesn't like that. So, and that's inappropriate for somebody to do. Hey, if you're playing ball, you don't like it when somebody else comes and plays keep away or pushes you when they're not part of your game. So what I do is I have Lucy sit every time I'm going to throw the ball or Jones comes back with the ball. And Lucy's pretty well trained here, so it's not very hard. I just have her sit, and then I give her a few treats. And I don't even have to give the treats at a fast rate because Lucy's well behaved at this age. I think she's about, so if you watch the Lucy Creating the Perfect Puppy DVD, I think she was about 11 weeks here. Yeah, 11 weeks is when I took her back from my parents. And then once I reward her enough when he comes back and she learns that, oh, I should just come back, be calm when he's running back and forth, then I can release her and see if she still runs after him. And I think I had one session with her, and then the second time I let her go run with him, and she was fine. She stayed away from him. Now, if you had another dog who wasn't as well trained, then you would have to be giving those treats really fast as Jonesy was coming back. In fact, you might just have to go, okay, I'm going to have this big, long treat that's going to take him 30 seconds to eat while I hold it and let him nibble at that treat while Jonesy comes back. And then you get the ball and toss it while he's still eating the treat, but in a sit. You might have to do that at first before you can get to the stage where you go, okay, I'm just giving you treats really fast. Does that make sense? Then you increase the interval between treats as soon as he can do that. But do it every single time until you get that habit. Okay, here's some overly aroused play. My friend was asking, how do you know when it's okay for dogs to growl? Well, dogs can growl when they're playing, but it's the type of growl that they have that makes a difference. So here's Jonesy and Homer playing fetch, or tug. So they quickly get overly aroused, but at least they let go right away. Come. I would not let a dog play tug unless they have an out that's that good.
Stay. Out.
This is where it would be handy to have a treat and train, because then you could just, when you say out, have one lie at the treat and train, and then you wouldn't have to keep reaching down. Or you have them both have their own treat and train. You send them to different places. They can be on the same remote or a different remote. Now watch when they play that they're going to get overly aroused quickly.
Jones, come here. Jones, hey. He's trying to stick his nose in all this.
This is their first time.
Ow.
Well, I don't usually let them play tug together. Or they usually just don't play tug together.
Jones, stay down.
There I stuck the toy in front of his face accidentally.
Okay.
So he thought he was supposed to play. Okay, so now I'm letting him play. So they get overly aroused immediately.
Jones, up.
Can you hear the difference in the character? The video isn't really not that loud right here, but if you're playing the video louder, you can hear that there's a different character to their growl. When they first started, it was okay for like the first 5 seconds, and then it got the so the it might be okay, but until this part is okay, but when they go that's not good. It's overly aroused. So these guys should not be playing fetch together unless I plan on calling them apart a ton and then giving rewards a ton for just lying down and calming down. Maybe even having them put their head down to get the rewards. So I decided, hey, they're just not going to play together because they have other things to work on. Jonesy can play fetch well with other dogs, but not with this dog. Or tug well with other dogs. Like with Lucy, he could play tug with and he doesn't get overly aroused. Okay, so steps 1 was keep him out of danger, keep him safe. Step 2 was to determine all situations where they'll be fearful and keep him out of those situations unless you're desensitizing and counter conditioning. And the one case where we decided we needed to desensitize and counter condition quickly was the boxes, because he was reacting quite frequently to boxes. And I couldn't keep all boxes away because we do a lot of shipping and we have boxes out. So I decided to address that one immediately. Then in terms of impulse control, we need to address that with the Learn to Earn program and keep them out of high arousal situations. And then step 4 is let's address the main fear stimuli, so dogs. So here's an example. This dog was, again, aggressive to dogs and people. And this is the speed at which she can move. This is a scary environment for her usually. In her own environment where there's not as many dogs and people, she's okay, but we specifically want to practice with high traffic to practice what to do. So basically, she's going to do an L pattern to get out of the way, but this is the speed at which she can move. So she sees people coming, so she's just going to move off to the side. And because she's practiced enough, her dog will focus on her in this situation, even though she can't move super fast.
Hey, good boy.
The same thing here. People are going to come by.
Nice.
And this dog is actually wearing a muzzle because it has had a history of biting people. And a lot of dogs, they'll just be like, okay, romp. Okay, here's Homer with the dog that he doesn't like. Okay, and then, so he'll take treats, but see, he still wants to look at the other dog. And I'm too lazy to get up, so I actually should get up. Well, right here, I think I was just trying to videotape. Look, he's reactive. Even when I'm giving treats, he's still reactive. He wants to look at the other dog.
I'm going to have you just stand him around here.
And then I'm thinking, okay, I guess I have to get up.
Stand right here.
Now, a short dog is harder than a tall dog because you can't guide him as well using a gentle leader. And then here he just balked. I could have just moved faster maybe, and he would have followed, but he balked going by the dog. And then I'm too lazy to move further. And actually what happened is we didn't work on the coding. We didn't have the coding system at this point. So we didn't know that you need to go far enough and fast enough to get him to watch you. What? Yes, I'm also leaning over because I know that he doesn't really care. He already knows to sit. So I'm basically getting away with whatever I can get away with because I know I can with him. So I'm not using perfect technique because I know what I'm doing is good enough for him.
Yes.
So here I can just have him sit near the other dog, and I'm specifically, there I try to target him. The problem with targeting is it gets him overly aroused.
Down.
So targeting is not good for him. So what I tend to do more was see if he'll do other things like down, and he has a few. So here, if he's lying down, he feels pretty comfortable. If he looks, I'm going to smooch to get him to look back before he gets overly aroused. I'm holding his gentle leader head collar leash short enough so that, long enough so he can move, but short enough so that he can't lunge. He's actually on a snoot loop. There, I practiced, he's doing cluster paws. There, bang. So for him, exercises where he's calm calms him down better than doing targeting. Then here I'm going to let him sniff for a little bit and then hurry up and call him away. For him, I don't need to move that much. And look, the other dog feels comfortable around him now. He's trying to hump him. So they're both, the other dog's reading that he's more relaxed now.
He's like, no.
So there he just got to the end of the snoot loop and then he realized, what, can't go anywhere.
Yes.
There, got to the end and he came back.
Good. Yes.
So I'm rewarding him when he looks, I reward him. And then I say yes and he looks back. So you can tell he's pretty comfortable right now. So basically, I don't have to do that much. I just do a few behaviors in close proximity to the dog because I can. Because he's not that difficult in this type of situation. Now, if a dog's coming down the street, that's different because it's not as safe a situation for him. So what you use may be different for different situations. So for instance, when I have difficult dogs and they're in my house, they quickly get used to other dogs in my house. And that's probably partly because their association in my house is that I know it's a controlled environment and I'm going to be protected here. But when you get out into the street and you don't know what other dogs are like, then that's different. But maybe in a class situation, they realize, oh, this is a safe situation where good things happen to me, right? So you have to adjust to the situation. So the question is, will he be good with this dog now? And so I know, based on history, that once he's like that with a dog, he'll be fine. So here, this dog is trying to even hump him over and over. And Homer really, really likes to play with other dogs. So he's doing his tricks. And then if you're not sure, how do I know if he wants to play with the other dog? You tie the other dog up and see if Homer wants to go over and play, and he does. Now normally I wouldn't want dogs to play with both up on their hind legs, but I think that for Homer, they stop enough in between and they look away from each other so that they slow down their play. So with appropriate dog play, there are a lot of stops, and the dogs will stop the play themselves. If one lies down, the other should not barrel over it. They should slow down. And if one dog stops and looks away, the other dog should actually pay attention and stop and look away. Okay, now here, once I have good control of the dogs, I can work on things like look at that. So I'll have them look at the things that might be startling, especially for things that are startling. So for instance, I'm here, I'm letting Homer look around, and you can tell he knows that if I look, maybe I get a reward because he looks back really fast. For a look at that exercise, I want to see that the dog looks back really fast as if he thinks looking there gets him the reward, versus a dog that's randomly looking and he's too focused to look back at you. Looking, is that good? I'm looking, is that good? I looked, is that good? So basically, for a dog like him, I let him look when he wants and I just say yes and he looks back. Other dogs, I specifically, like Jonesy, I would point left or right, and that means look that way, and he'll look. And then if he looks, I say yes and he gets a reward. Look how sleepy Jonesy looks here. I've had Jonesy for several years here and he's more scared than Homer on this particular day. He's been here enough times where he's been happy, but he happens to be scared this day. So which is why I want to throttle him right there. So he shut down because he's nervous. Okay, when you're doing the look at that type of exercise, reward them for looking and then looking back. Oh, so the type of case where I would like the dog to do that specifically would be cases where they get startled, like somebody walks in the door and they get startled and they bark. It would be nice if they could see, oh look, somebody's coming in the door, look at that. I'll actually point and have them look. And then they see it and then they hurry up and get something. Okay, now here's Homer. There, that's too much. So I try to tap him. And then I actually told Jonesy to step on him. I just thought it would be funny. Okay, so this is not a lab situation. We just try to goof around and see what'll work. And wouldn't it be nice if Jonesy could help Homer? Not really. Step on Homer. So, but you saw how that look was. Suddenly he honed in. So if you're doing that game where you want the dog to look at the other object, you need to make sure that you have them look back before they get overly aroused. For Jonesy, if I do look at that, he gets more aroused. So if he looks, he might come back and get his treat, but the second time he growls. So what I do with him now is if I have him look at that, I have him come and step on my feet and then get a treat, because then stepping on the feet tends to just get him more focused on the second activity. I've even had a situation where, and I've only done it a couple times, I need to do it more, where I've been lying outside, for instance, a store, and there's a treat on the ground, and he's doing a leave it, he's not allowed to get it, and then somebody comes out, I'll point, he looks at that person, and then I'll have him step on my foot, and then he gets the treat on the ground. Because I'm just trying to figure out what way will it work for him. Because you might not be able to do it the same way for every dog. You have to figure out what's going on with my dog. And with Jonesy, he learns things a lot better if he has to do a behavior. So for instance, if I train him, somebody's coming to the door and you hear the sound, the cue would be like a bark bark on the video. You'll hear a woof woof. It's a person saying woof woof. And I wanted that to be Jonesy's cue to lie down at the treat and train. But if he just heard woof woof and was sent to lie down, he was not picking it up. He was not picking that means go lie down. But when I trained him, when you hear woof woof, step on my feet, and then you'll get a treat from the machine, he could pick that up. So it's just, what does your dog understand? My dog does not understand abstract things. So hearing a word, just go lie down there, that's not really to him an activity, I guess. So for him to hear that as a cue to do an action that's more of an action, I think he could just understand that better. So now if he hears that, it's like he's alerting me. It's like, he's my hearing dog. Oh, there's something at the door. Woof, woof, step on your paw. Step on my foot, and then go get his reward. Okay, so our overall approach is that, number one, we want to keep the dog safe. We want to keep the dog out of situations where he might bite or be aggressive. Number two, we want to identify all the situations where he's fearful and avoid them unless we can desensitize and counter-condition. And then we want to address impulse control, put him on the learn to earn, and avoid over-arousal situations. And then we said we're going to desensitize and counter-condition to specific fear and reactive aggression triggers, with the main one first. Okay, and now once we get down to here, we want to go back and say, well, let's hit more of these other fearful and arousal situations. And then lastly, if there are other things we want to work on, we can work on those too. So number 5, desensitize and counter-condition to other issues. So just one example. Remember, Jonesy has a fear of many things, and we got him used to the boxes. So I just want to give another example of training him the skateboards. So I want to show you, remember the box situation? Here, with the skateboard, I keep going over threshold accidentally because he's barking. He should not be barking when we do this. The reason he's barking is because I'm moving it and it was too close to him. And then at this point I'm going, well, maybe I'll use a toy as a reward, and maybe I'll throw the treat on the ground to get him further away, but as soon as he eats the treat, he's looking back at me and coming towards me, and then I move the skateboard, and basically what I'm saying is I'm not controlling the situation well because he's often too close, and when I move it, it scares him. So sometimes he ends up barking. So can you see it moves and then he looks at it, he backs away. So I keep going above threshold. So what do you think, what might you do to control the situation better? Hey, I could have another person hold him. Good. So that's one thing. I could have another person hold him so he's further away when I make it scary. What else could we do? Or I could hold him and have the other person move the skateboard, because then he could come back to me to get the treat and start all over again. What? Yes, so I could start with a skateboard stationary. Now I actually already did that, and he's to the point where I need to start moving it, and that's why, because I'm at the point where I'm moving it, but he's too close. So how can I do it with just one person? Yes, I could tether him, but then I would have to keep releasing the tether. Yes, a treat and train. Yes, so how I did it with the treat and train is go lie down on that rug, you stay there, I'm going to make this thing move, and then I'm going to stop it, and then I'm going to say, okay, and you can step on it, and then I'll reward you with the treat and train. Does that make sense? So he's lying down at the treat and train to start with, because it's easy. He just goes place, he runs there, he lies down, then I move this, and then I as it stops, I say okay, I release him to step on it, and when it's actually stationary, and then as soon as he steps on it, I beep, and he goes and he gets his reward at the treat and train, and then we can start all over because I just tell him to lie down there and wait until I move it again. Does that make sense? So basically then I can control his distance while I decide how scary to make this skateboard. And when he's good at a really, really scary skateboard, then I could do it with him closer to him. So anyway, this is how he is with skateboards now. So now if he sees a skateboard, he thinks, woohoo, that means I'm going to get something good. Which is useful, because now a lot of dogs you can get used to skateboards by just counter-conditioning them around the people who are skateboarding. In fact, I had one person in class who just took their dog to a skateboard park and trained the dog to focus on them, and then the dog was really good. And then of course I was irritated because she only had to do that with one session, and then here I have to do all this stuff with Jonesy. But that's okay, I'm happy for her. But Jonesy needed more than that. Jonesy needed to really think the skateboard was something wonderful, especially since it's hard to practice with 5 skateboarders riding by. You don't know when that's going to happen. So now when he sees a skateboard, he's not scared, and if 5 skateboards come by, I'm just going to counter-condition him. Or if I haven't worked with him with a skateboard for a long time, I'll go back to counter-conditioning him just in case, because he just hasn't been around him. And there's all types of other things that can cause him to be aroused. But in general, when he sees a skateboard, he's not afraid of it. He'll think it's something to play with. And in general, if a skateboarder goes by, he's not going to be reactive to it. But I may counter-condition him just in case, sometimes. And then the last step is that psychopharmacology may be needed. So how do you know when you need it? Well, you go talk to your veterinary behaviorist. And there's not many people, so what you do is you talk to your veterinarian and have your veterinarian join the American Vet Society of Animal Behavior so they can post their question on the boards. Or if they belong to the Veterinary Information Network, then they can also post there and get help on there. Or they can set up a consultation with a veterinary behaviorist to help them over the phone. And then on my Behavior Bites newsletter, I also have information that would be important for them in one section that sometimes has articles that are helpful for veterinarians, or that might, for instance, I have an article coming up that's on how to know when you're giving drugs, how to know how to monitor them. Because a lot of times vets don't want to just use the meds, and rightly so, because they're responsible for what happens. And if they don't know that much about how to know what's right, then something bad could happen and it's their license on the line. Because sometimes people tell them, my trainer said that my dog should be on this. Well, the trainer's license isn't on the line, so they can say whatever they want without knowing all the side effects that could occur and how to know if something's going wrong. So if you think your dog needs to be on medications, or you've been working really hard and your technique's fairly decent, or if the situation is like thunderstorms or separation anxiety where the dog is very dangerous, then yes, we need to find somebody who can help you in terms of knowing what medications to use or calling a veterinary behaviorist and having a consult with them, to your vet having a consult with a vet behaviorist, because that's not a full consultation, it's a veterinary consultation, and getting advice on what to use and how to know when to use it. So again, our overall approach is keep the dog safe, identify situations where he's fearful and avoid them unless you're working on them. Address all impulse control issues, so start the Learn to Earn program and avoid high arousal situations unless you're working on them. And then desensitize and counter-condition to all specific fear and reactive aggression triggers with the main ones at first. And then after that, you can address any other procedures that you think are important but are not the first on your list. So the overall message is that treating fear and reactivity and aggression, says to people, it meant to dogs or people, or really a lot of issues, it's straightforward actually, right? It's actually pretty straightforward. It's just there are nuances that you need to pay attention to that are really important, such as stay below threshold and have good technique. Secondly, you have to realize that all experiences should be positive. You don't want, if your dog is reactive to dogs, you don't want to go, oh, let's try and see if he'll be okay with these dogs because he seems like he's okay. And then what happens is you go past 5 dogs, he seems like it's okay, and then the 6th one he attacks. What happens is the first 5 he may have been neutral to, or he may have been thinking, wait a sec, well, I kind of feel bad, but not bad enough to attack. So we want to assume that he's going to be reactive and give him positive experiences so he doesn't have a chance to have a bad experience. And then we need to keep other people and dogs safe. Other people, we need to control the people and the dogs around him. Like we need to get him out of those situations and keep him safe. And we have to realize that people aren't just going to listen and do what we want. So for instance, your family members might not comply. Well, don't rely on them to comply then. And then classical conditioning and desensitization alone are often not enough. We generally need impulse control and operant counter-conditioning in situations where where you can't control the threshold level, where that other dog is going to get close all of a sudden. They're not going to stay 2 blocks away. They're going to appear all of a sudden. Does that make sense? Oops. And suddenly that's the end. Surprise! So actually, what I want to do in the last half hour is give you a couple of cases to work on yourself to see. And the first case I want to give you, I'm just going to tell you about. So this dog is named Tanner, and he used to be pretty well behaved, sort of, in that he went through the Learn to Earn. But then, so Tanner is probably now a 4-year-old Jack Russell Terrier, which means that even if you think he's good when he's young, you should keep working with him because he's a Jack Russell Terrier. So what happened was that he went, he ended up living with the parents for a couple years. And before he went there, he really liked to play with dogs and he liked people. But he did have a tendency to sometimes get really scared of certain things. Like, for instance, the first time he came over to my house and he met a dog that was bigger than him. He was like walking along and he saw the dog and he's like, oh my God! And it was just like, he saw him. The dog wasn't doing anything. It was just standing there and he freaked out. So he could have just seen a picture of the dog and he would have freaked out. So, you have a dog like that and maybe he's not having problems right now, but that tells you if he has that strong a reaction, even if he can recover quickly, that he might have some problems down the road. So you should probably get him to go through the Learn to Earn and keep him really focused on you and control his interactions around other dogs so he's getting positive experiences. So if he goes to the dog park, he really likes to play with dogs, but he's a little overly aroused and he plays kind of rough, but the owners think, well, it's okay. And then on walks, he's kind of okay. And then what happens is he stays with the parents for 2 years and they let him bark at everything. So because of that over-arousal, now when they take him out, he barks at dogs he sees, at cars, because he's allowed to bark out the window, cars, bicycles, things that go by fast. And in the car, he barks at things that go by. So the first thing I want you to work on is how are we going to fix, well, I should just have you work on this whole thing. But let's say his main problems are that he barks at other dogs on walks. And let's see, other dogs. Oh, forget the other dogs for now. Let's talk about inanimate objects. So he has a problem with inanimate objects, including bikes that go really fast, scooters, buses, and then also he has a problem in the car. So if he's in the car, he'll bark at things that are around him. And she used to put him in the crate, but he throws up in his crate, so she doesn't want to put him in his crate. Does anybody have, so I'm going to have you work in groups, and basically think about his two issues are that he gets overly aroused around moving inanimate objects, and then also when he's in a car, he gets overly aroused. And then also, if he's getting overly aroused at the inanimate objects and buses, that means he's difficult on his walks, right? It's hard to walk him because he's going to see things going by. However, the owner can walk him. She could find times in her neighborhood where she could walk him just not too far away from her house. But he's not really good at looking at her right now. So he will kind of walk with her, but he won't really look at her. And when he was young, he did go through the Learn to Earn program. So this is somebody who's in vet school now, and she actually came and visited me. She used to work for me as an admin person, and she came back, and I worked with her dog on her, what break was it? Summer break for like a week. So get in your groups and kind of come up with a plan with how would you work with this dog. And does anybody have any questions before you start on that, about this dog? Oh, okay, so it's the owner had the parents took care of the dog for 2 years, and now she's getting the dog back. Yeah. So she had the dog went through the Learn to Earn program, then she had the parents take care of the dog for 2 years, and the parents let the dog bark and lunge at everything, like look out the window and bark a lot. And they didn't train the dog. They didn't continue training with it at all, and now it has difficulty on walks and reactive to objects and moving objects, and also dogs, and then reactive in the car, so it's hard to drive him places too. So how are you going to deal with this? Any other questions?
Was he a puppy?
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, they got him as a puppy. They actually got him as a puppy, so everything that happened is their responsibility. They can't blame it on anybody else. So I would say objects that move fast. So like a scooter or a bike once it's moving fast enough. Yeah. Okay, so we'll think about it for 10 minutes and then we'll go over it. Okay, so we have Tanner the Jack Russell Terrier. He's about 4 years old. He was, the owners, when they first got him, they went through the Learn to Earn. He was good with other dogs, but he played a little bit overly excited. We know he has a history where sometimes if he gets startled, he just goes, rah, freaks out. Then he was sent or lived with the owner's parents for a couple years. He was allowed to bark outside a lot, and they did not train him at all. He was not on the Learn to Earn program at all anymore, and so he lost all his impulse control and got way worse. And now, for instance, he barks at cars when he's in the car, and he barks at inanimate objects that go by. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, I meant to say this at the beginning, that to get the video for this entire 2 days, it'll be sold by Tozzer Dogs. And so there's a newsletter sign up, and if you sign up for that, you'll get a notification for when this video comes out. And then I also have my newsletter sign up for Behavior Bites, and that comes with a newsletter, and you'll get some information about how to get notes for this lecture and many different other lectures once you sign up for that. That's also on the back table. And then evaluations go on the back table too. Okay, so we have Tanner the Jack Russell Terrier, 4-year-old, went through the Learn to Earn as a puppy, was fairly decently behaved. They could take him on walks, they could take him to the dog park. Sometimes he played in an overly excited way, but he wasn't aggressive. And he does get scared sometimes. So if he gets startled by, for instance, the first time he saw a big-ish dog in my house, he went, ah, and freaked out. And then once he realized he wasn't dying, he was okay. He got good to the dog pretty quickly within maybe 5 minutes. But after he's gone to the parents' house and lived there for 2 years where he didn't get trained at all, and he got to bark a lot outside at things going by the window, now it's really hard to walk him because it barks at a lot of things. So he barks at fast-moving objects, he barks at dogs, and when he's in the car, he barks in the car. So just to show you what he looks like in the car, looks like this. There. Lovely, huh? Yeah, yep, they all go away when he barks. Makes him feel so strong. Okay, so what are some of the things you came up with? What did you guys come up, well, why don't you give me some ideas what you came up with overall, and then to address the car. Okay, yeah, so number one, he has to go back on the learn to earn because he needs impulse control. Because you may say something to him, but he can't listen to it because he's being too impulsive. He can't actually pay attention and think. So she'll go back onto the learn to earn program. Now, I forgot to say that there's something tricky about the learn to earn program for this dog. We bring this dog to my house, we're thinking we're going to work on the learn to earn program, and then darn him, look at him on this floor. Oh, look, there's my rabbits. This dog used to be fine on these hardwood floors. My house had hardwood floors, and he stayed at my house for like a week. See what happens when you send your dog to your parents? Don't do that. Probably what happened at the parents was he'd get all excited, and then he'd sprint off in different directions and slide and run into things, and then he got scared. So now he has to learn how to walk on a floor. And anyway, for this dog, he can walk okay if you keep walking him. I think if I had this dog, I would take him to a gym and just walk him on it because he's not super scared. He's just a little bit like, this is kind of weird. And then he starts walking funny, which makes him messed up. So it's not like he's paralyzed. It's like you trying to walk on the ice. It's just that the way he starts walking is weird. So if you can just get him walking in a straight line where you don't have to change directions, and then you're giving him rewards, then he can learn to walk with his feet instead of his nails. So I think that wouldn't be that hard. Okay, so we're going to put him on the learn to earn. Then what else do we want to do? So let's say we get him on the learn to earn inside. Specifically, what do we want him to do in his learn to earn program? Impulse control, like what do we want to train him to say please by sitting for? Like specific, give examples. What is everything? Treats, going in and out the house. What else? Walking from place to place. That's why it's important that he doesn't walk like this. We need him to be able to walk normally from place to place. Repeat sits backwards. And it turns out when he's on a rug, he still remembers how to do those things. So I thought he was going to be such a basket case by what this person described to me. But no, he actually remembered those things, so he could actually focus with little distractions. I thought he'd be in the house and he'd have to bark at everything, and he'd have to rush out the door, but no, if you blocked him, he would sit. If you did repeat sits backwards and there was a carpet, he could actually do it. But there's not much carpet in my house, so we didn't get to practice it that much. Oops, hey, how did I get way over? Oh. Okay, so how are we going to deal with the car case? He's on the learn to earn. Okay, so we could reduce the visual stimuli, yeah. Because remember, we can control the environment so that he doesn't need to feel like he needs to bark. So how can we reduce the visual stimuli? Yes, we could try a calming cap. What else? We could have tried the crate and covered the crate, except that she said he would get sick in there. But she could try again, because how do we know that he's still going to get sick? Just because he got sick once a long time ago doesn't mean she shouldn't try it again. You could cover some of the windows. Oh, okay, so he mostly barks when it's moving. Oh, wait, that's not true. Oh, but we were at a stop sign, that's why. Yes, so you could cover, I don't like to cover windows in the car because I feel like I need to see. Oh, at home, okay. At home, when the car is stationary in your park, you could try that. Okay, but what else, so are you just going to practice putting him in the car and covering the windows? Okay, I just don't know. You have to tell me exactly what you mean by that.
You can practice with him having it down in the back seat.
Uh-huh.
Before he can see any step.
Okay, good. That's a good one because now we're actually training a specific behavior. Let's train actually a down. Good. Okay.
Whether you can use the treat to train in the back, so you could be driving and
Yeah. Well, you can actually put the treat and train on automatic, so it releases treats every 3, 5, 7, 15, or on a variable schedule.
We don't want him to get a treat because actually let you down.
Yeah, so maybe when would you give him a treat? So if you're using the treat and train, when would you give him a treat? Maybe you would only give it to him when he's quiet. Maybe you'd give it only to him when he's in a down. How about if he's being noisy and you want to get him quiet? Don't we have dogs who are barking at us and we want to calm him down and we just throw the treat too to counter condition them? So there's several options. Maybe we just have treats go really fast and that'll get him calm. Maybe we'll only reward him when he's quiet. Maybe we'll train him to lie down and specifically be training him to lie down. Now, how do you know which one you might do? Yeah, you try it. You try it. Because people always say, oh, this is the best way. No, you try it because maybe down is the best way. But if you don't have to train that and you can just give him treats, why not do that? Do whichever works the fastest for you in your situation. Uh-huh.
Okay, so I just started throwing some treats in the back seat for
Uh-huh.
my dog, but I asked him to be quiet first. And when he's quiet, I
Uh-huh.
toss it in. Should I just keep, because he's loud in the car, should I just keep tossing him in and tossing him in, tossing him in the back?
Yeah, before he can bark again, ideally. Or you have it come fast enough so that you keep him at that low arousal state. Because remember, classical counter conditioning, if you're just giving him the treats, your goal is to change his emotional state and keep it changed. If the treats are coming too slow, then he's going to get overly aroused again in between the treats. If we're, yes, you can give him a filled Kong too. What happens that goes wrong with a filled Kong? They can bark and then eat it too. So the way you use a filled Kong, if just giving treats is good enough, a filled Kong will also be good enough. If a filled Kong is good enough, then just giving treats will be good enough. The problem with the filled Kong is that when you run out, then they may just start barking. So what can be better is if you have the treat and train and you're giving treats, then you can control when, you could do several. With a treat and train, maybe one advantage would be that you could have treats coming frequently and then you can slow them down. Or even better, you can actually train him to lie down with fewer and fewer treats. So the strongest way is to train him to lie down with fewer and fewer treats for keeping him lying down. But the faster way is just giving him treats and hoping it works, and then spreading the treats out. Does that make sense? You want to do whatever is going to work the fastest, maybe. Okay, so okay, would have been nice if I labeled these. Okay, that one, here. Okay, so they decide, let's try just a calming cap. So how does he look with the calming cap? Funny? Yeah, he looks funny. Yeah, he's not actually calm, right? He just can't move. But maybe that's okay for now, because maybe she just needs to get from location to location because she has other things to work on, right? So they can't do everything at once. Maybe she just puts him in the crate and puts a calming cap on for now. And maybe that's good enough. Or maybe she puts him in the back seat and attaches him to, with a seat belt and keeps the calming cap on. And maybe she attaches him to a seat belt where he can't get up and look out and keeps the calming cap on. So maybe for now we just go, okay, just get to work and come back. Or get to where you need to go with him, and you're going to reserve most of your food for other training. And this is how we're going to make your life tolerable in the car so he's not learning worse things in the car, right? Because you got to do what works best for the owner. Okay, so let's say we do that. Alternatively, we could do this. And I have to say, let's see, I guess I don't have, this was not positioned quite right. So it makes him get up. It needs to be pushed further closer to him.
Yeah.
So basically, I actually was able to do this just giving treats by hand. Like if he was going to go, blah, 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 I could still get his attention focused back on me. And if I was giving treats by hand, he would easily lie down. So that tells me, hey, look, he had some impulse control practice when he was young, and that actually makes a big difference, because I bet you if he didn't have that, he wouldn't be able to look back. But if I can get his attention that easily and just give him treats by hand, then this treat and train is going to be fine. Except that she needs to figure out, well, how can she position the treat and train so that he'll actually be in a down? And actually what she should do is practice in a down stay without the car moving first, so he learns his down stay without the machine on. So for him, I think it would be better if he's in a down stay, because that's calmer, and then she can increase that interval more easily, probably. I'm guessing. I haven't tested. I haven't done a research study taking 20 dogs one way and the other way to test it. But she could probably even have him in his crate. Well, the good thing about the front seat is she can tell if he's lying down, and she can just have it going, and she can just drive in safe areas, you know. Yeah, if you have a large dog, then I would have it in the back seat with the treat and train on the floor. Or I would have it in a crate with the treat and train. I would have the treat and train in the crate with the dog. And then I would teach the dog. You wouldn't be able to see them. Yeah, so that's why I put them in the front seat. You know, the front seat's not the safest place for your dog, because, you know, if your kid's not allowed in the front seat. But then, it's again, we're trying to figure out, well, what'll work the best for training, and nothing's going to be ideal. So.
But if it's a big dog, you can't do that. I mean, she likes to sit in the front seat, my dog. But
It depends how big. I've had like a medium shepherd type dog where it lies on the front seat and then you treat and trains on the floor. But I try to control it so they're in a harness so that they actually can't get up and move around a lot too, because they may not be trained to do a down. Like he knows how to do a down, they just haven't worked on it consistently. And yeah, you want to train him to do a down stay on the treat and train beforehand if you want it to go smoothly. I'd train him to lie down at a down stay following the treat and train protocol, and then I would do the same thing in the car, because that training him through a down stay would only take a couple days. And then applying it to the car, just take them in the car, and that's how they get the meal for a couple days, and they learn that they just lie down there and the treats don't need to come frequently. And then when you start moving, then just go on a short trip with them in the car with the treats coming frequently and end up at home. Yeah, the calming caps, I think it's like having pantyhose on your face. I don't know, it looks like panties on your head. So they can see sort of things through it. But you might as well try it. You could try a thunder shirt too. Might not work, but it's easy to try. You borrow somebody's and try it. Well, they let you return it too, but most people don't want to return it because it's a pain to return. So borrow a friend's. Okay, so we got what we're going to do with this, right? And you have your problem, so you know what you're going to do with your dog? Okay. Okay, so next thing, what do we want to address next? The what? Taking the mask off. Yeah, this dog would have been fine without his calming cap. He would have already, the first day we tested him without a calming cap, and when he would bark at things, I could just go, and he would turn around and he'd lie down when I asked, and I could just give him treats. But giving treats by hand, I couldn't give it at a regular interval, because then it's a pain. You're going like 1 1,000, 2 1,000 treat, 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000 treat. I'd rather just use a treat and train on a specific setting, and when he seems pretty good, just change the setting so the treats come less frequently. So. Yeah, after they're just calm. Yeah, once you get to treats coming every minute or so, then he's just going to be calm. So with the treat and train, what happens is when they're first learning it, they seem really focused and excited. And then once the treats start coming slower, like 15, 20 seconds, then they get calmer. And then once treats are coming less frequently, like a minute, then they calm. Sometimes they start just sleeping. Because you can put it on a variable schedule of 2 minutes or 5 minutes, and when it's on a variable of, for instance, 2 minutes, it'll come sometime between 2 seconds and 2 times 2 minutes, which is 4 minutes, minus 2 seconds. So like twice as long. So just like between 2 seconds and 4 minutes, with average being 2 minutes. So once you get it onto the longer intervals, then they get more and more relaxed. But you need to make sure that I would train it without the car first, and then in the car with the car stationary. For the most successful training, like with the least problems, I would train it at home, then in the car, until you could get it to treats coming like every minute. And if you want, you could extend it longer, but then you got to read something in the car, do some work in the car, I don't know. And then take the dog for a ride. So, and they should ride, ideally, okay, we're living in the real world, so I'm saying ideally, but, tailor it to your real world. Ideally, you would go, let's just take him for like a short 5-minute ride, because you don't want him to be filled up with food. And if he has to be on a high rate, he's going to fill up with food fast. So you could say, let's just take him on a short ride and get back before he's full. And if he needs to get treats every 3 to 5 seconds, then maybe it's only going to be 3 minutes, because that means 20 treats a minute. 20, 40, 60, how many does he really need? So probably half a cup, depending on your dog's food size. That might be half a cup already. So it depends on how much he can eat. So you want to make it short, and then as soon as he's good at that, you can start increasing the interval. But try to make it last the whole ride, and then increase your ride lengths. And most likely, if you do it very systematically, it's going to go really fast. It's if you skip around that it's going to take forever. So it's best to keep like a little schedule so you can say, all right, we got past this stage, and then it's like thumbs up. You can see how you're improving.
Can I just get a quick question?
Uh-huh.
In terms of other rewards, I've heard that deer antlers are actually good for chewing dogs, but that can increase their testosterone levels?
I don't know, but I know they can break their teeth on the deer antlers. So other rewards like chewing on things, I think chewing is fine. It's just that if it's something too hard for them, their teeth, that they could break their teeth. And if they're anxious, they're going to chew harder. So I don't want to recommend something where they actually break their teeth when they're chewing hard. So I prefer like a Kong toy. Unfortunately, not a lot of dogs like Kong toys when there's not food in them. So, but oh well, that's life. Okay, so we got the car thing dealt with, right? You feel comfortable with that? And if you can just use a Kong toy with food in it, that's even nicer, as long as you get your food prepped ahead of time. Okay, let me just show you some issues he had. Okay, so we tried learn to earn. So remember, inside he had problems because of the floor. Then outside, his problem was he always wanted to go back to heel position. So he likes to look down. So she's trying to lure him because he has a tendency to push his body into heel position. And remember what I said about, did I say this about Jack Russells? They get stuck on the same thing. Like whatever's in their head, it's like they have problems reversal learning. Whatever you learn, that's what you do. So my thing about Jack Russells, you better train it right the first time, because they just get stuck on that, and they just need way more repetition to do it the new way. So here's what you'll see a little bit, how he's going to go crooked here. Right. Not bad. You'll see. Of course, he wouldn't do it when we wanted him to. But he's not really having good focus here. She needs to lure him the entire time, because he is going to go crooked if she doesn't. See how he turns his butt the wrong way? Then he's going to turn his butt the wrong way again, right there. So it's really hard to do repeat sits or lying down because he keeps turning his butt. And I have to say, most dogs that I deal with that, I just do a little lure and they go right in front, and then 5 minutes later they're sitting in front instead, even if they were really wanting to be by the side here. So one thing about what she was doing is she needed to put that lure down in front of his nose and turn his head right as she was taking that last step. So he needed to turn she was trying to move his body this way just by putting the treat here. What she needed to do is turn the head right as she was stopping, not the body.
But she did it face in one
No, because then he's not, if she pivots to face him, he's not learning to come to follow her. Yeah, he needs to learn to follow her so that she can move quickly and he'll follow with her. Okay, so what we do, oh, there's the floor, is we specifically practiced, and I don't know why it took me this long to figure this out. Watch how she turns his head now. Right as she's stopping, turn the head right there. Well, she should turn it a little more. The head, she's there. See the head turning at that last part? She needs to overcorrect. There we go. There. So now you can see the head turning at that last minute. The body goes where the head turns. Luring is the hardest thing. So I don't often lure. Now I specifically have her practice doing half turns so that he'll practice rotating that way. There, that was a little crooked. He didn't follow all the way. There we go. And then really after she did this for one session, then he was able to sit straight. But before that, we had done 2 or 3 sessions. If they're not improving by the second session, you're doing something wrong. Really, if they're not improving within that one session, you're doing something wrong. Yes, he was trained originally to be in the front, but then in the last several years, she only practiced having him on the side. And so he was stuck going to the side. No matter what, he would just like, wah, wah. So she needed to get him to come in straight. So again, one reason we take data is because, hey, we don't want to get stuck on a point. If we're getting stuck, if we're at the same level at the end of one session, if we're at the same level at the end of 2 sessions, it's really bad. If we're at the same level at the end of one session, it's kind of like, well, maybe I'm not quite doing something right, but I'm not sure. But if you're at the same level at the end of the second session, then you need to go back and really change something. So she needed to change how she lured. And then also doing the quarter turns instead of just repeat sits backwards. Okay, now, let's see. You just want to see, she was only at my house for I think 5 days, and then we had the problems where she couldn't get the dog to walk on the floor, and then, so her training was like behind schedule for a regular person because of all his floor type of issues, and then realizing, wait, he's not going straight for you, doing this backwards thing, and then he's one of those dogs who has a tendency to walk with his head down on top of that. So remember I said, if you have a dog that normally walks with his head flat like that, it's harder because you're trying to train him to walk and look at you, but they don't even normally walk. They seem like they can't even walk that way. Well, it turns out he can, and she does get a little bit of looking at her right there. So she can get that. But by day 5, this is the level he's at. He's not super good for her. He will look at her a little bit. So that's actually pretty good. For her to be able to get 5 steps, she could never get him to look at her before. But now she needs to watch her footwork. Watch this footwork and tell me what's wrong. Okay, you'll see. This is supposed to be an about turn. Watch her feet. Okay, that one's not bad. Okay, that one's not that bad, I guess. Oops, okay, it wasn't that bad. But she's not taking steps. She's kind of just pivoting her feet and turning. So he's watching, he's kind of walking a little bit crooked, but he will watch for like 5 steps. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
He's watching only with the wing and the tree.
But that's okay, that's how they're learning. 1, 2, oh, that was a weird one. 1, 2, 3, 4. So she's getting about 4 to 5 steps. When they're learning, that's what they're learning. They're learning if I go 4 or 5 steps, I'll get a treat. Then once they get that, they're learning if I go 7 to 8 steps, I get a treat. Then they're learning somewhere between 5 and 20 steps gets a treat. And then after that, it's just, hey, randomly you get treats. You don't know when you're going to get them. So that's how they're learning. It's just like when they first learn to sit, it's because there's a treat. And then once they get it really well, then hey, you got to sit automatically for all these situations. So that's as good as this dog can heel. Is this good enough to be around other dogs yet? No. Yeah, no. How about around inanimate objects? What do you think about inanimate, well, let's see. What do you think about like move? Yeah, probably not cars, right? Because cars might be too fast, maybe. What do you think it? Yeah, by a parked car is fine. What other type? So let's say he reacts to somebody on a scooter. Do you think you could work with him at all yet? Her repeat sits backwards are sort of okay, but they're not quite. They're sort of okay. They're almost to a level, but the part heeling forward, no, not really that good. So what are we going to do? Let's say, well, what would you do around, let's try an inanimate object, well, inanimate moving object, like a scooter. What would you do? How would you practice? Let's say your dog is good at the learn to earn, repeat sits backwards. What would you do? You would do what? Uh-huh. Until when?
Until, like they're in, the scooter just comes out by itself as he's coming down the street.
Okay, so the scooter comes by as he's walking down the street, and then what do? You let him... Okay, but what do we want to do? So what specifically should I do when I see that scooter? Just see how he reacts, or? Okay, so should I just have him sit and look at me? And stand stationary? Okay, so you're telling the owner what to do. Just watch the scooter come by, and it depends on his reaction. Is that your instructions? What will your instructions be? Okay, so your instructions will be stay far away from the scooter first. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Then, okay, but you're giving instructions to the person. You're going to say, is your instructions be start far away and just gradually build up? Okay, so our instructions will be we're going to give the dog treats in the presence of a scooter. So does that mean, so if you say that, what will the owner do? The dog will see the scooter and the owner will just chuck treats in front of him. Maybe that'll work, but you have to know that that's what they're going to do when they hear that. So that's an option. So you can just say, if you just chuck treats, what category of learning or training are we doing? A positive association, so what? Yes, classical counter conditioning and desensitization if we're starting far enough away. So we couldn't just give treats. And because she has done that, if we have a far enough distance, that can work. So let's say...
Have the dog look at the object and then look at her and to get the treat to the...
Okay, so we can do the look at that too. So if we decide to let the dog look at the object and then reward the dog for looking back, what do we need to really control?
The threshold.
We need to really control the distance of that item. So we need to have a friend who's very patient, who will be far away from us, and who will come every day for how many days to do it, right? Yes. Yes. Which is... Yes, that's what I just said earlier, right? Didn't I say that this dog is not really ready to be in a situation, right? Right. But I am saying... That's why I'm asking, what are we going to do? Nobody has said heel your dog past the object, right? Nobody has said try to heel your dog and get them to watch you. So what can we do? What does the dog do well right now? What was he doing okay at? He was doing the repeat sits backwards lying down okay. So we don't just say, we can't do that, so we can't do anything. We say, what can he do? Is there anything that we can do yet?
My dog, I have chicken treats that are very
Yeah.
favorite is chicken.
Uh-huh.
In situations like that,
Okay, so your dog won't focus you with chicken. Are you delivering treats within 0.2 seconds?
immediately.
Are you getting them to, if I watch you, is your delivery always within 0.2 seconds, your speed? If we clock you at that and we're all looking at you, will you always hit a 1 score and get it within this?
If I see the obstructions first, yes. If I see
No, it doesn't matter if you see the obstruction or not. It means, did you get it from here to here within 0.2 every single time? 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. When you move back, are you moving at 175 beats per minute? What do you think the likelihood is that she's moving at 175 beats per minute moving backwards? Did anybody here that we did move back fast enough immediately without practice? No. And once they did one exercise, did they go on to the next exercise fast enough? No, there was always a hesitation because you haven't practiced it yet. These are skills. It's like, hey, I watched Tiger Woods. He made this great shot, and I watched it, and I swear I do that, but it doesn't work. What's wrong? What else should I do? Learn how to do that first? Like, you got to learn the techniques. You can't just say, well, this is what I do. But that's not what I'm telling you to. That's not what I'm saying do. I'm saying improve your technique. Get that delivery within from here to here, 0.2 seconds. Move. You saw how much difference just moving a little faster made. The difference between not watching at all to 100% focus. Just that one thing, moving fast enough and consistently enough, going from one exercise to another fast enough. That is all the difference in the world. So I don't care if you have the best food in the world and you starve your dog for a week. If you do not have the technique down, you're not going to get your dog to focus on you. So when you can say you have 0.2 and you can video yourself and somebody's clocking you and you're always at that 0.2 seconds and you are moving at 175 beats per minute and you're moving before you're going from one exercise to another fast enough, then ask me what the next step is. So for this dog, we said, okay, realistically, so I just want to show you something about him. So this is how he reacts to the scooter. Okay, so that is not as horrible as I thought it would be.
Want to try it again?
Okay, that's a little worse. Okay, now let's just see what the common kappa is, just curious. Like he seems like he's okay there, but I don't know, we need to make it move closer. Okay, he's on the opposite side. Because we're like, hey, maybe if she needs to get him out on a walk, maybe with the common kappa would help. I haven't tried this before. Okay, not, right? So what you do is you go to a client, well, try a common kappa, and they go, yeah, it works fine, because they're not at the same level distance, because they're not paying attention to what's really happening. So you need to go and see, what are they really doing? People always say, oh, I did exactly that. Well, let me take a video, because when I'm watching the video, it doesn't look like you did exactly what I was saying. So you need to watch and actually, that's why we have these measures. I need to measure, this is what I want to see. What distance are you reactive at? What speed is the animal reactive at? So here we know that if the speed is fast, the dog gets more aroused. Okay, so I want to see, well, can you do anything? Well, here, let's do that. Let's see if this works. Can she just, because we don't have the best dog. We don't have a perfect dog yet. So, but is there some way that we can get the dog to be around the skateboard or be around some things? Yeah, we added the gentle leader, and he just stuck the treat in front of his face right there and kind of moved out of the way a little bit. And
Oh, he's
look,
looking up.
now he's actually looking up on the gentle leader.
Yeah. And now he's looking up with the gentle leader on. Look at that. All right.
Now, the one thing that he has going for him is he had been on the learn to earn when he was young. So he has some impulse control. So again, the thing about, well, he won't work for the food, even in the high distraction situation. Well, did he go on the learn to earn? Because that's going to make the difference in terms of, Does he have just enough impulse control to be able to know to come back? So this is not perfect, but hey, she's in vet school. She doesn't have much time, and somehow she needs to be able to practice with this dog. So if she can just walk her in areas around her house where there's not too much traffic and deal with the dog in this type of situation this way, then that can sort of tide her over. She can keep the dog below threshold and do just a little bit like an L every time one of these things come by. Then look at her response to a tractor. Well, I guess it's a tractor. Reactive, pretty reactive. So that's slow moving, but it's noisy. So I think that's why he's so reactive. He is also reactive to cars moving at this speed too. But then, okay, so, but now look. It turns out it's not that bad to keep him focused, but the reason it's not bad is because she's gone through the learn to earn previously, even if he's not perfect at it in my house.
That's kind of like you were saying.
It's because he has more impulse control than you would expect him to have just because he's gone to the learn to earn. If he had not gone through the learn to earn, I would not expect him to look back because he has not had any impulse control training. So it's not just the fact that there's treats, it's the fact that we used high value treats and he's already done impulse control training and he's susceptible to actually focusing a little bit when there is some guidance and direction. And then let's see with the dog. So here with the dog, so this type of dog, so usually he would be barking from this distance across the street.
Sorry, Melissa can move closer.
So you can see he gets up kind of fast to look at it. But this type of dog at this distance, she can just reward him, and then she should head back. Because you can see he keeps getting up and looking around. So for her to just be able to handle this, she should give treats fast and then get out of that situation. Now she, again, this is not ideal. We would like her to watch way better, but she's only had 5 days of training, so come on, give her a break. So she's in vet school, which means she's in school all the time almost. She has very little free time. She came over and visited me for 5 days. Her dog had more problems than most of your dogs will have. Your dogs will probably be able to walk on the floor in your house. So the dog could not walk on the floor in her house, and it could not sit in front of her. So it was hard to practice with low distractions because we couldn't get it to work in the house well. And then even outside it was difficult because we basically took 2 days getting the dog to come in front. So that's a wasted 3 days. So we could say this dog had 2.5 days of training, and I'd say that's pretty good for 2.5 days of training after being with the parents for 2 years. So the fact that she could get 5 steps of watching means that now she'll be able to get 7, 8, 10 steps pretty quickly when she finally has time to practice because she's in vet school. So who knows when that time is going to come. But hopefully in the meantime she can do these other things that aren't perfect, but hopefully she can control the environment well enough that she can just take the short walks and be in situations where things aren't going by too fast. So she needs to stay in areas where she can control the stimulus. Like don't take that long walk. Just drive somewhere where you can, in the calming cap if needed, I told her to work on the car thing first so she could drive somewhere where she could take him if she needed to, and then just have a short walk in that area. Uh-huh.
So for dogs in the shelter, unfortunately,
Uh-huh.
when we get them out at first, they have all this energy. Do you think it's best for us to kind of walk them first and then train, or what do you recommend?
So here's an example. So for instance, the thing I hear from clients a lot is, well, my dog is good once we get past the first 5 minutes of the walk. And realistically, the first 5 minutes is the most important part because that mimics the time when they're most distracted and highly aroused. And that would be similar to if they saw something that was high distraction and kind of scary. So for those dogs in the shelter, ideally what I would like to do, because you know they're super excited, would be to be able to go in and work with them in their kennels so they learn to be calmer in that type of situation first. And I know it's hard because sometimes the kennels aren't exactly the right size for you to fit in there, but at least if I could, I would start there so they would learn to be calm in that area. And then it depends on the setup of your shelter, because the ideal one has a lot of small rooms so that you could take them outside of the room and they'd have visual blocking, and then you could work them in that small outside area because it's not like there's a ton of stimuli right there, and make sure they were hungry. So if that was possible, then I would get my technique good so I could work with them in that situation. So number one, get them good in the kennel, because that should not be a problem. If you're finding that it's too hard to work with them in that right outside that area, then yes, do get them exercise so that it's easier for you or the staff to work with them, because they need to have some positive experience. And once they get good working, once they're calmer and they get consistently good, then go back to let's get them good right in the most exciting situation. So we're going to tailor it for whatever the situation is. Ultimately, we want them to be good in the highly exciting situation, but for learning purposes, we may need to get them in the lower situation first and then work up to the more difficult situation. So any other questions before we do a summary? No? Okay, so the overall message was that treating fear and aggression to people and other animals and overreactivity in general is fairly straightforward, but there are so many nuances and little points that you always need to remember, because one little point is going to make the biggest difference in the world. For instance, just that treat delivery speed or that movement is going to make all the difference in the world. And that remember that ideally we would have all the experiences be positive. And if you can't do that, like maybe only 50% of your experiences going past dogs is positive, then you just know, well, that's why it's taking so long. So for me with Jonesy, I'm going like, well, I could someday spend a week where I decide I'm just going to do these 3 things, and then I know that he'll be way better, and maybe that'll be in November. But for now, he's pretty good, and when people see him, they're like, wow, you have the best trained dog in the world, and I'm going, but I have to work with him right here, but they don't know that. They just think he's the best trained dog in the world. So for me, for him, I can go, well, that's good enough because everybody thinks he's fantastic, and they can't tell. But for me, I would like him to be better. So for me, someday I'll go, okay, I'm going to take this several weeks and work just on this really frequently until it becomes a habit. It's like the box thing, 5 days. We can get him much better in that box situation in 5 days. And then classical conditioning and desensitization alone are often not enough. So classical conditioning alone is often not enough because you often can't control that threshold so well. What we need on top of that is impulse control, because impulse control is what's going to help the dog look back to us when we're trying to guide it. And we want to add operant counter conditioning in most situations. And that is the end of the 2 days. So hopefully you have people that you can talk to and practice these things with, because a lot of times you hear it all, but it's not until you go practice it and go step by step through it that it really makes sense. Now, for a lot of these things, I do have discussion questions on my website under the CE page, and a lot of the lectures you can see again on the CE page, and then Tozzer Dog will have the video that you just sign up for their newsletter. But it's also really good to just look at the discussion questions, go over them, watch some of the videos over again, and then discuss with your other trainers or other people who have come, because you'll remember different things, and it's always good to have your colleagues to help you. Any questions? Great, thanks to everybody for staying an extra 40 minutes.